All right, welcome back to GENXDC. This is the place where we talk about all things 70s and 80s from a DC perspective. I'm producer Spencer from the WGTS 91.9 morning show with Jerry and Blanca in Washington, D.C. And I'm joined, as always, by...
I'm Dan Lou Coda. I'm the former morning show producer at WMAL Radio. I worked with Hardin and Weaver, Tim Brandt, Andy Parks, many years over there at that institution.
That's right. Part of the reason I'm in radio is because of Hardin and Weaver. I love listening to them in the morning. But you know what we're going to do today, Dan? We are going to talk about candy in the DMV in the 70s and 80s. And I'm going to start things off locally. Vladi's Candy. I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard of this before, Vladi's Candy?
I haven't. No. What is
Okay,
this?
so and it's spelled Velatis.
Okay.
And they would have it at Woody's. Do you remember Woody's, the drugstore?
Absolutely. Woody's, yes. It was a department store like JC.
Department store, I'm sorry. That's right. So when we would go downtown, I wish I could remember exactly where the one we went to was, but we would go downtown, and that would be one of the treats we would get is Vladi's Candy. And it was a caramel. And it was kind of like a flaky, sugary style caramel. It was a square. And some of them would have nuts in it. Some of them would have chocolate in it. But it was really good. And maybe, you know, there's so much historic it started actually in 1866 in DC.
Wow.
And I guess because I had heard stories about it, about my, grandparents getting it and my great grandparents eating that candy. So maybe I, made it up how great it is, but I do think it's really good. But you can actually try it. You can actually go online and find Vladi's Candy now.
They still have it. Awesome.
They still have it. It's you have to order it. But if you want to get a taste of it, go on and get it. And I just loved it. Like I said, it really melts in your mouth. It's one of those if you like caramel, yes. And I think you do.
Oh, yes. Goes without
saying. You will love it. So it is a DC tradition. So what about you? What's a candy that you loved in the 70s and 80s?
You say caramel.
Caramel. You say
Caramel.
tomato, I say tomato.
Right pronunciation. Caramel, caramel. What can you tell them from Maryland? Caramel. It's caramel. Marathon bar.
Yes, I remember
Marathon bar. Oh, I used to love that. And it came out, mid-70s?
Uh-huh.
It had this, it was so wide. It was about 2 inches wide, maybe 8 inches long, give or take.
Yep.
Very flat. And it was just caramel with milk chocolate over top of it. And you would chew on this thing. And it took a while to eat it, thus the marathon. It took time to eat it. But they were so good. And then they just disappeared. Got into the 80s. And it sort of was no longer there. Just it was so and you kind of forget about it.
Definitely a classic candy. And I remember, I definitely remember the candy bar. But I guess when I went in the candy section, as soon as I went in there, I didn't look for the chocolate. I looked for Now-Laters, or as I called them, or as I think we called them growing up in Adelphi, Natalators. I didn't even know they were Now-Later until who knows what 1990 or something. Yeah. So, but they were square candy, and you had purple, you had grape.
They were all individual.
Yeah. It was hard. Sometimes when it got hot, it was hard to get the little wax paper off, and you get some of it in your mouth, but still was good.
Stick in your teeth. You've been trying to get it out of your teeth.
And then it would hurt. Yeah, I think I lost a filling one time on this candy. But I loved it. I loved the grape. They had cherry, but then they had lime. I never liked the lime, so I would give that to my brother and sister.
I'm not a lemon lime guy in any candy. Anything yellow or green, I'm sort of like, no, we're good.
But the thing that makes it like a classic thing for me, a historic candy for me, is growing up in going to Buck Lodge Middle School, and I remember even at High Point High School, kids would sell Now-Laters. So they would buy these little packs for about 25 cents, and then they would sell the 5 of them in there for about 10 cents each. And then they would buy bigger ones, and they would go, there was a place called Myers down in Langley Park.
Yes, okay.
That people would go there, and they would buy, bulk of them. So they ended up making money, and we had a guy we called the Candy Man.
My brother Rob, he's 6 years older than me. He would go to that. He cut grass.
Right.
In our neighborhood there in Langley Park, Adelphi. Yeah. He cut grass. And then he would take the money and buy some of the money. He'd buy candy from a little distributor there behind the old A&P.
Yes.
There, the University of New Hampshire meet just back there behind the old A&P. Then he'd take that to, he went to JNA, as I did to John Nevin Andrews School. Shout out. They're not
Tacoma Park, right?
Tacoma Park. Yep. And he would sell candy bars in like the middle.
What? So he did it too. Wow.
6th grade, he's selling candy bars, and in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, he's selling candy bars. Man, he was rolling. He always had an angle. My brother. Shout out to you, Rob. Always working. Yeah. But then I would get into it, and he'd get mad at me.
Uh-huh.
He'd have all sorts of good stuff from there. It's like, oh man, I'd eat some of his profit. But for me, you got me. I'm salivating here thinking about candy.
Me too.
But I love bubble gum. To this day, I still love bubble gum.
Me too.
And my big bubble gum, and I have some with me, is
Big League Chew.
Oh,
Yes.
I love this stuff. The flavor is fantastic, and they have it in grape. But to this day, I'll put some in and chew away.
Well, see, when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, you would turn on baseball games, and they would have tobacco, which they shouldn't have been doing. Probably it was dangerous. But for kids, you felt like you were like the pros because you shoved this into your mouth and just had it in there like a big hunk of tobacco. But
the flavor would go away after a while. You'd be
yes.
Like,
yep.
What are you doing?
Well, so you like the original best, or what
No, I like the original best.
Okay, see, I used to like that, but then grape came along.
Grape's pretty good.
I love grape.
Grape's pretty good, but for me, the original, which I had right here, the
right.
original. But yeah.
All right, now that I'm salivating, we're both salivating. I remember. Do you remember Fun Dip?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Oh, my wife still loves that, and my daughters love that. You can
really see. I've talked to some kids, and they have no clue what Fun Dip is.
I know. See, Tam and I, both me and my wife, we're into this older candy stuff, and you can find some of this stuff like at Cracker Barrel.
Yes, I love it all the time when I go there.
That's where they found it, was at Cracker Barrel,
okay.
Just on the other side of the Bay Bridge. They were going, they were going.
What it was, you had at least the packs that I got. It was 3 sugary individual packs, and you had cherry, grape, and lime, kind of like Now or Laters, and you had a little stick that was kind of like a piece of chalk. Yep. And it tasted like a piece of chalk because you could eat it after you were done, but you would take it and dip it in, lick it, and just eat all that incredible sugar and get it all in you, and you get all hyper for your parents. And
high. Okay.
It was an amazing thing. And then when you were done, you eat the Fun Dip little stick.
Yeah, oh my goodness. It was just sugar at its highest form.
Oh, and I'm sure I had my parents paid a lot of money because I got a lot of cavities.
I got a few too. Do you know the one thing? A lot of guys and girls in my class would do the wax like little Coke bottle.
No, I remember those. I love those. Yes.
I never got it. I never got it. No, they'd be like, "Here, try this." I'm like, the wax part of it. And Tammy, my wife, still loves that stuff to this day. Like the wax lips, and I'm like, I never got it. I'm sorry.
Well, there was different ones. There was one like you were talking about, like the Coke, but you could also they had them in other type of juices or something in it. Yeah. Because I remember just biting it off and then just shoving it in my mouth, and it was just the juices would just go all in your mouth.
For me, it's like after you got past the sweet.
Yeah, all right, you're right.
Then there's that waxy like. Again.
That's right.
And you're like, would I swallow this or something? So I just done with that. So I never got into the wax stuff. I remember the wax lips too. I was like, okay, yes. Interesting.
All right. Well, we could go all day with
candy.
Talking candy in the DMV or for that matter, but
chocolate covered.
I want to hear from you.
Chocolate covered pea. That's still my favorite.
Oh, me too. I love those too.
Remember going into Montgomery Wards there in Wheaton, you came in that one door, and it was just candy display, nut display, insanity. It was that was almost as good as the toy department for me. Just sorry, I went off on a tangent.
It's something very similar to like if you go to the beach, if you go to Ocean City, some of these boardwalk places.
Walk and Fuss, the one in Columbia Mall. I still have.
Yes, exactly like that.
Peanuts the other day from there.
Right.
Fantastic. So sorry, I digress. But
we also want to hear things that you want to hear us talk about, 70s and 80s related in the DC area. And actually, a friend of mine, Mark, suggested that we talk about things where we remember where we were. You know how like in the 60s, before we were born, or you were born in, I guess, in the 60s, but people in the 60s remember where they were when JFK got shot. They remember where they were on the moon landing and things like that. Yeah. We'll talk about things in the 70s and 80s we know but we remember where we were at.
Excellent. That'll be fun.
That's on the next one.